Chapter 121, Spiritual Lands 1. Gremry himself had very little knowledge of these spiritual lands, as the demons classified them as the beast world's unique treasure that promoted the strength of its inhabitants. Some major worlds had exceptional unique treasures that made them powerful and stand out in the universe, one of the examples being the system of 72 rulers of the demon world that were near impossible to truly kill. The beast world had spiritual lands as its unique treasure, or so the demons thought. Spiritual lands were one of the things that stopped their advances into the mythical kingdoms from continuing, as the powerhouses defended themselves with hordes of beasts as well as many other features from higher-tiered spiritual lands. The frozen plateau spiritual land I had obtained was currently still very small in size, hidden amongst piles of snow, as I, the beasts, and thousands of defiled corpses were safely staying inside as if it was our own small world. I could feel my connection to the spiritual land and some of the intricacies involved in controlling it. Using the unique skill spiritual land management made the very complex intricacies of the spiritual land very easy to handle, but I still didn't have enough information. Since Memory Plunderer worked on the body of the Demon King, I wanted to give a try to another object. Nothing occurred when I activated it with the power jewel, so let's see if this object that was a spiritual land would be any different. I prepared myself for another potentially headache-inducing experience. After just coming out of the first one, I placed my hand on the clear ground of the frozen plateau as I felt the strong connection intensify, and I activated Memory Plunderer once again. A red light shined again and became even brighter as the spiritual land became the first object that I could obtain memories from. This was a very abstract concept as I pondered on objects that could be considered to have memories. It was much hazier than the memories of the Demon King, and they came in small amounts as I saw some of the history of the frozen plateau, many things about its formation, plants, beasts, and the continued condensing of essence that made a lot of fantastical things possible pass through my mind. Soon enough, the scene of the transparent red woman came out as I watched how she underwent the process of upgrading it from Tier 1 to Tier 2. My mind brightened up at this inflow of amazing information as I saw the possibilities of moving forward and how to use this treasure to give me the best returns. The ways of upgrading also made themselves somewhat clear, and it seemed the beasts born from spiritual lands were one of the requirements for upgrading to higher tiers. As the memories continued to come in and consolidate, I opened the Spiritual Land Management panel. Spiritual Land Management, Frozen Plateau, 2, Beasts, FXXX, EXXX, D23, 620, C. 8753, B 4876, A for 11, S 79, Epic, 19, Plants, Whitefall Trees, available for planting snow vine, sacred rye. Features: size regulation unlocked, movement unlocked, anchor unlocked, boost surroundings locked, architecture locked, frozen barrier locked, offensive maneuvers locked, email protected locked, time dilation locked. Email protected locked. Upgrade, conditions not met. The numbers of beasts had increased as the defiled corpses that the Holy Blight controlled were placed into the ranks of beasts, no matter if they used to be demon, beast, or human. After going through some of the memories, I started with the plants, as they were actually one of the important factors. Plants, whitefall trees. Fond of the cold nature, they leave behind a beauty that many creatures enjoy. Time until maturity, 5 months. Snow vine. Plants that thrive in the cold. A collection of snow vines growing together is conducive for the growth of all ice attribute beings. The fruits they yield help cultivate the power of beasts born in the spiritual land. The effects are heavily reduced for anyone else. Time until maturity, 8 months. Sacred rye, a grain that very few get the chance to enjoy, slightly strengthens the body, boosts mana sensitivity momentarily, and relieves negative effects. Time until maturity, 1 month. The plants that could be cultivated in spiritual lands were one of the main ways to raise the power of the beasts that were born from the condensing of essence in this land. Once the ranks of the beasts were raised, as well as another factor being met, the tier of the spiritual land would be upgraded and more functions would become available. I started off slowly and selected Snow Vine first, as it was the one that directly boosted the beast's power. A spectacular scene played out after, where fields of empty snowy lands on top of the spiritual land were presented in a blue holographic outline in front of me. I sent my command to the spiritual land while using the unique skill, Spiritual Land Management, and I was shown the amazing sight of tens of large seeds condensing in the air and shooting down into the snowy earth on the field I selected. A blue flash of light passed as everything returned to calmness. And on the section where plants were listed was a new change, snow vine. Time until maturity 8 months. This fantastical and game-like sight made me sigh in amazement as I wanted to try out even more things. The first thing though would have to be the non-standard skill I gained from the rank S dungeon some time back though. I sent a command and my figure was transferred into the snowy field where the snow vine were just planted. The seeds were spread out wide on a large acre of land as it seemed the plants would be similar in size to the whitefall trees that populated the spiritual land currently. I looked at the clear field of land as I cast Budding Farmer on this frozen plateau for the first time. A blinding blue light flashed as essence condensed in the location and the skill finished, and I watched in wonder as the seeds that were just planted in the ground trembled before they sprung up. A tremendous amount of essence roiled about as all of this occurred. Saplings could be seen, growing at a visible speed as the formation of beautiful collections of vines began to make themselves apparent. The vines were white in color, holding small pointy ends that shone dangerously in the light. Small blue fruits could be seen growing sparsely on the many vines that sprung up in the acre of snowy land. I checked the panel for the plants yet again. Snow vine. Time until maturity 4 months. I had to shake myself out of my stupor as I saw the period of maturation for the plants go from 8 months to 4 months. Now the question was, if I continued casting Budding Farmer, just how much further can I bring down that time? Budding Farmer was cast multiple times after that, where I found the skill to be taking an exorbitant amount of mana that even the legendary Sigil of Hegemony had less energy usage than the skill that propagated the growth of plants. This was my first time coming across a lower-ranking skill that took more energy than another skill 2 ranks above it. I visibly observed the continued growth of the snow vines in front of me as the blue fruits growing out sparsely shined more and more, becoming even larger. This process continued until I was presented with the sight of 5-meter-tall white vines with large blue fruits standing gloriously in the formerly blank snowy field. I checked the plants section yet again. Snow vine. Time until maturity 2 weeks. 2 weeks, from a period of 8 months that the fantastical plant needed. It was brought down all the way to 2 weeks, no matter how many more times I cast Budding Farmer on the now populated acre of land. I couldn't reduce this number anymore. It seemed some time still had to pass before such treasures could be ripened still. These were plants that could only be planted in this spiritual land, specifically for the purpose of raising the strength of the beasts in it. It was something that required a significant amount of time to mature, and yet I had brought it down to a period of 2 weeks. I looked forward to other surprises from these peculiar skills like Budding Farmer and Spiritual Land Management as my figure moved to try out even more things. Chapter 122, Spiritual Lands 2. The next thing to look at was the other plant I could cultivate currently, Sacred Rye. A grain that very few get the chance to enjoy. Slightly strengthens the body, boosts mana sensitivity momentarily, and relieves negative effects. Time until maturity 1 month. Seeing this plant reminded me of the project that Adelaide had begun with, and the fact that I still haven't gotten back to the Frozen Kingdom after the battle ended. I didn't know how much time had passed when I blacked out from the extensive hundreds of years of broken memories from the Demon King. So I had to move quickly and take care of the important things in the spiritual land before moving out. The plant, Sacred Rye, seemed like it could be enjoyed by the beasts born from the frozen plateau and others without discrimination, as it still provided the same benefits. There were many more plants that I would be able to work with once the tier of the spiritual land was raised, and their effects would no doubt be even crazier. I looked through the many regions of the spiritual land as I played with a blue hologram of it through the use of spiritual land management. There were still many empty snowy lands that could be cultivated as the beasts in the spiritual land could be moved around. Even the wide expanse of tall whitefall trees could be cleared out as they disappeared into particles of essence and drifted back into the frozen plateau. I was looking at multiple acres like this where I selected snow vine and sacred rye to be cultivated en masse. The fantastic formation of seeds that formed in the skies and then shot down like a bullet into the ground could never get old. The seeds for sacred rye were much smaller than the snow vine, with the required time for maturity also being lesser. I used Budding Farmer on all of these new acres of fields and watched the magical sights of the plants that quickly grew all around me. The sacred rye seemed mystical with its colors of blue and gold on the plants that grew around a meter, similar to the snow vine. I could not continue to reduce the days for maturity completely, even though the maturity for the rye was significantly less snow vine. Time until maturity 2 weeks sacred rye. Time until maturity 2 days. The time for maturity was significantly reduced from 1 month to 2 days for the sacred rye, still showing just how astonishing the capabilities of budding farmer were. The first time I used this skill in the outside world was when we visited the Shadow Dukedom. The plant there had taken a single cast of the skill to cause it to mature and ripen. The only limitation to appear were these extravagant plants in the spiritual land. The last thing I wanted to finish up before heading to the outside world was the absorption of the legendary cores the Demon King had dropped. There was a significant amount, showing just how thick the essence Gremory had collected over the years was. The process took me another hour as I felt the continued strengthening of my body. The attributes I had currently matched those of someone legitimately in the legendary rank. Even the support skills that were rank A and S did not make me feel as great as the increase in this power felt. The boosted vitality and strength made me feel like I had endless strength and could take on any hits, although I always preferred to protect myself with even more defensive skills and barriers so that no hits even came near my body. Defense was the top priority for this life of mine that was connected to something huge. I looked around the spiritual land where I wanted to stay and do even more things, but I forced myself to go out and check the situation of the Frozen Kingdom first. I had to prepare for the movements that the demons would take after the true death of Gremory was registered and they began to move. I already had an idea of what would come as I continued to sift through the memories of the dead Demon King. The spiritual land would be of huge importance to me, not just with its magical features, plants, or beast, but because it provided a space where I could do whatever I wanted without prying eyes. This spiritual land effectively meant I had a place to spam my many destructive skills and do whatever I wanted without worrying about prying eyes from the outside world. I left my holy blight summoned as he waited dangerously in front of rows of green zombies in another section of the spiritual land. The zombies ranged from ferocious demons, all the way to valiant humans that had faced their death in the recent battle. This wasn't to mention the large disfigured bodies of a variety of Komodo dragons and mephitic turtles. The Holy Blight had gone out of its way to collect many interesting things. This wasn't to mention the many beasts that could be raised in this land, and the possibilities of me doing the cruel thing of taking their skills through instituting a dungeon-like scenario similar to the trial of supremacy that took place before I gained ownership. All of these functions were capable through the spiritual land, and I was looking forward to seeing how many more surprises there were after its tier rose from 2. The sleek Emperor Penguin was giving me a less unyielding look after the show of my power against the Demon King, its beak slightly lower than it was some time ago. I chuckled at the arrogance of this penguin as I looked favorably on the teleport skills that it provided for me. Its beak pointed even lower after it, and the many beasts that congregated around the spiritual lands felt the usage of large amounts of mana, and then observed the fantastic growth of snow vine and sacred rye. Almost all of the epic beasts that were weakened and had some of their origin eaten up by me in the trial of supremacy clustered around the still maturing snow vines as they looked towards the white-blue fruits vibrantly growing amidst the sharp vines. Even though they could only cluster and enjoy the vibrant air the plants gave, none of them would be able to enjoy the resplendent fruits without my permission. As most of the things seemed to be settled in the frozen plateau for now, I began to move out. I flashed out of the miniaturized spiritual land and took it in my palms, using anchor to stably attach it to myself. I looked around the few miles around me using regal archer's eyes as the scenes of the deadly battle played themselves out. Soldiers could still be seen in the surroundings of the snowy mountains. My figure was hidden with the many covert skills that I had active, at this moment looking like my normal self and not the bestial figure of a huge beast carrying around a large sword. I gazed around the snowy mountains a bit longer and then used teleport, disappearing and then appearing in a grand room in the manor at the center of Snowy Peak. Chapter 123, A Hero's Return. The Snowy Peak was much different than it used to be as I could feel the presence of many powerful figures moving around. There were even more royal guards surrounding the large manor, many of them being rank S and a few rank as my hidden figure walked around the manor, the guards passing by not being able to even spare me a glacé as I went towards a large hall in the manor where most people were condensed at. The hall was full of nobles and ministers that busily moved around. A sense of frustration was in the air as some could be seen sending accusatory and unsavory words to others, with a few having a sense of calm trying to bring everything down. The commoners will soon begin rioting if nothing is changed. Humph. They never were a thankful bunch. Tisk. Stop with that attitude. You're still holed up in your castle with reserves of grain and food that could last you weeks. You would never understand the feeling of not knowing if you will have something to put in your belly the next day. Nobles could be seen trading words back and forth as the talks continued. What of the heroes that took down the Demon King? If we could just get in contact with them. Ha! Those powerful figures were most likely from one of the mythical kingdoms. Do you really think after doing all that they would still hang around to help your pompous ass? It seemed to be more arguments than anything effective actually being done, and frustration was in the air. At the center of all of this was a princess surrounded by even larger groups of nobles as it looked they were pleading with her to do something. As I was walking in, the face of the princess that was impassive with a hint of tiredness lit up. She tried keeping her emotions under control as her clear voice rang out above everyone else in the room. Everyone, clear out for a moment. The voice was low but resounded all around as it hushed the squabbling nobles who looked at her in a confused manner. When they saw she was being serious, the figures of people quickly scrambled out of the large hall. Only taking a few minutes before the huge doors were closed, I felt multiple shadow guards silently appear behind the closed door as a barrier that prevented any prying eyes erected itself around the hall. I found the impassive face of the princess to be showing more emotions than usual as an expression of distress moved to relief when my figure became visible to her. You. The princess seemed to almost be huffing as she stopped talking and breathed in and out, calming herself down before she talked again. Esteemed sir, I am glad you're back safe and sound, but do you know how many days had passed without a word from you? I was. The girl seemed to have a trace of anxiousness as she spoke, and I tried to calm her down by replying with a smile. I had taken a look at the communication medallion on the way here and found some messages from her, so I expected this. Something big happened after I took down the pest aiming its fangs towards the kingdom. How many days have passed? She looked to be surprised as her expression fully calmed down as if she understood. She seemed to have become her old self as she said, as long as something occurred and there was a reason, then all is well. It has been more than 2 days since the kingdom's forces came back from the war against the demon forces. When you weren't with them nor answering through the communication medallion, even with the word that victory was ours, I couldn't help but worry. I looked at the girl that seemed to have gone through a flurry of emotions she would normally never go through and felt apologetic. Don't worry, it was my fault. I'll make sure to keep you up to date whenever something like this arises again. I'm curious to know the state of things at the moment though. Adelaide had fully calmed down as a slight happy expression came on her face, and I found her doing a curtsy once again. Let me first thank you for going out of your way to save my father and the people of this kingdom who have yet to know the hero that slew the Demon King. We owe you our lives. I scratched my nose at the sight of this beautiful girl bowing to me once again as brushed off the thanks and asked to fill me on the current state of affairs. I had to know if any movements were made, even though I was confident that my enemies would not move this fast. Besides the mourning that was taking place for all those that fell in the war, many were looking for the heroes that appeared to save the day, the gallant saint that rained down blessings which healed all wounds, the sword beast that pulled away the Demon King, and many others who disappeared just as quickly as they had appeared that day. The saint they were praising was an unholy poisonous abomination that was now standing guard over a small army of corpses in a spiritual land with the other beasts that also made their appearance. As for the large white-furred beast flinging around a cold blade while dishing out spectacular skills, maybe they would see it again soon enough. A small issue over the appearance of these heroes arose from the actions of the holy blight of raising all the corpses on the battlefield. Adventurers, mercenaries, and other soldiers had people they knew that fell in battle and they couldn't even reclaim their corpses. This raised some negative sentiments amongst others, but it was quickly quelled down by the majority positive opinions of the heroes who had saved the kingdom. This issue made me think a bit about the actions I allowed the holy blight to take, as I wondered if I should have limited it just a bit. The other issue besides this was the fact that the kingdom was experiencing an inflow of many refugees from the surrounding lands as the perpetual winters of the north had become even harder to live in with the invasion of demons. Famine was on the horizon for many people if something wasn't done. At the mention of this, both the princess and I smiled. It seemed she had already made the plans, as we both recalled my actions that caused the instant maturity of the crops on an entire acre of land in an instant some time back. I've already put plans into progress to move forward. Whenever you are available and with your permission, I would love to start putting them into action. The girl had already had people clear out and cultivate many acres and fields of barren lands where produce would normally take quite a while to grow or not grow at all modes of transportation. Farmers to harvest the products, and many more things that overlooked the entire process of farming and distributing the produce were all ready to be put into place. I gave Adelaide much-deserved recognition for setting everything up so quickly and planning things this early. I even had my own surprise of the sacred rye that was an extremely fantastical plant that would be ready in just 2 days. No, things like this are the least I can do while you continue to fight for us. After some time, I will go have another talk with my father to see if I can achieve something earlier and be able to move many more pieces. He hasn't been the same since he returned. A slightly sad expression appeared on her face as she talked about her family. Even with the powerful heals from my holy blight, the king that I saved from the clutches of 2 blue manticores and a demon king was still heavily injured. The cause was of course the son that had fallen under the demon's grasp. I had the sparse memories of Gremory, so I knew a bit more about the story behind all of this: a betrayed father and a stupid son. How would this play out? Chapter 124. Adelaide's Ambitions. I didn't have any pity for the older brother that colluded with Demon King though, as he was rotten long before he fell under the influence of the demon's illusory magic. He was now jailed, with nothing to his name as his fate hung in the air. Adelaide had a cold expression as she talked about him, seemingly not caring the least bit if he lived or died. There were too many incompetent people in positions of power. With the miracles you continue to bring out, there are countless possibilities of moving forward. Adelaide was becoming more and more straightforward as time passed, and she continued to talk about the huge project she wanted to undertake. Agriculture moves the world. No matter if it is powerful adventurers or the common people, food is the #1 thing. They spend their days risking their lives or working odd jobs just to be able to have the next meal. Now, if we correctly play things with the esteemed sir in the lead, she seemed to be careful with the next words she wanted to say, as if she couldn't pull them back once they were out. I found Adelaide doing something surprising again as lifted her dress, her knees touching the ground as the future queen of the frozen kingdom bowed her head once again. I can promise to not just deliver you a kingdom, but create for you an empire. The words were calm and clear as they left the red lips of the princess. I looked towards this girl and continued to be surprised by her actions and plans. It wasn't bad to have someone like this helping me out. I quickly moved to pull her body up as I just had not gotten used to someone this grand-looking doing something as kneeling. All in due time, my princess. Let me show you something first before we move out to the fields you've prepared. The next thing I did after watching the light of ambition swirling in the eyes of this icy princess was to show her just how much bigger the possibilities were. Both of our figures flashed away as they appeared on the snowy earth of the frozen plateau spiritual land. Adelaide was shocked as she looked around, her shock becoming even greater as she recognized the whitefall trees that were unique to the Sky Peak nest that the frozen kingdom had come to know. This is... She marveled for a few minutes as she walked around the snowy fields, coming across the acres where I planted snow vine and sacred rye. The Sky Peak nest that floated quite a distance from the kingdom. I affirmed her thoughts as I went on to give some pieces of information about the spiritual lands that they called nests, about how the mythical kingdoms on the other parts of the continent fully utilized the blessings of the spiritual land to rise to where they were today and remain strong in the face of the demons. Dangerous words that I like to hear came out of Adelaide's mouth as she looked around in stupefaction. With your ability and a treasure like this, the world really isn't far from being in your grasp. More and more emotions that I never observed before on the face of this icy princess were coming out as she continued to be surprised at the information about spiritual lands, the plants, and the beasts that now followed my commands. The things outside can still be carried out as planned, but my present to you is the sacred rye you see growing bountifully in these fields. It's leagues above any of the common plants you know, with capabilities of boosting mana sensitivity, strengthening the body and removing negative effects. The more my words came out, the wider the cute mouth of hers continued to expand in shock as her hands passed through the white gold rye growing all around. She spent the next few minutes eccentrically looking through the fields until she neared the snow vines too. Surrounding the nearby vines were the epic beasts congregating together as they longingly looked towards the white-blue fruits glistening off the snow vines. Adelaide went close to the powerful beasts with no fear. She trusted my words too much that she only interestingly observed the beasts I told her would follow my commands. She was still rank S, so it was surprising to see her watching collections of epic beasts so curiously as she checked on the grandiose growth of the snow vines too. My commands were already sent to all the beasts in the frozen plateau about not harming a single hair on anyone that I brought in. The sleek emperor penguin that still had a trace of arrogance in his bones looked with interested eyes at Adelaide's intrusion. There was a lot of information for her to process as even grander ideas formed in her head about how to best use the sacred rye she just learned about. She was walking back and forth as she mumbled. Merchants and nobles would go crazy for something like this. If it is produced on a mass scale, can even start establishing trade routes with mythical kingdoms. So much to do. The girl was completely in her own head as we continued to explore the spiritual land. I was glad to have someone like her taking care of many things in the background, as my knowledge so far was still that of a dropout college student. The many memories I obtained from Gremory made me much more knowledgeable, letting me see many paths that I could take in the future as time passed. I would be falsely boasting if I said I knew anything about running a country, not to mention a kingdom or an empire. So while I experienced many things and learned more about the intricacies of power and worlds all around me, I would put some trust in this princess I found in the northern lands of the beast world. My strengths lay in the spectacular cheat that was my nearly endless mana, as well as all the powerful things I continued to obtain and use to elevated levels because of it. The spiritual lands were just one of the treasures that was unique to the beast world, and I still only had mine at Tier 2. There were many more tiers and mysteries for me to explore as time passed. There were also many other unique treasures in the many worlds out there, and I felt the excitement just thinking what sorts of mystical things they held. I was thinking too far ahead though, as I was still just a legendary ranked individual in a small corner of the beast world. I would progress rapidly but surely, and be sure to learn about even more secrets and mysteries of the fantastical things all around me. Because of the memories of Gremory, I could already see the path ahead. While I was about to prepare to solve some of the crisis of food plaguing the frozen kingdom, I was also looking a few days or weeks into the future where I saw a huge incident occurring. From the memories, I was now somewhat familiar with the mindsets of demon kings and demon lords. The demons would not sit still after a true death had just occurred, but they would also move carefully to try and understand why. So I didn't expect to be swarmed with hordes of demon kings just yet. The information I held told me that I would most likely be faced with another demon king a few days or weeks from now, and I already had an inkling to which one it might be. A dangerous smile formed on my face as I walked through the spiritual land with the princess while browsing through the memories of the identities of the rulers of the demon world and their unique and ultimate skills. Chapter 125: Cheat Farming. The tour of the spiritual land finished soon enough as the excitement of the princess was palpable. Completely unlike her usual self, our figures flashed back into the large hall of the manor as I used anchor to place the spiritual land onto my body. Once more my figure became hidden as the princess had her veil cover her face. The barrier around the room disappeared a few seconds later as the large doors opened. Many of the nobles that were waiting outside looking in with cramped faces. A significant amount of time had passed while they were kept waiting after all. Adelaide ignored all of this as a command left her mouth. Prepare the carriages. There are many things that need to be done. People moved around as various tasks were relegated. Workers and guards were quickly assembled all around as new commands continued to be given. I had my own task as I teleported out of the manor towards the locations of farmland Adelaide had mentioned to me beforehand. Not too far from the manor, there were large empty fields where many seeds had been sown. I could sense multiple guards around the perimeter of the farmland, with some shadow guards here and there. The first field I flew down to was a field that held white radishes, as I was able to observe the rapid growth of the plant after I cast Budding Farmer. An expanse of blinding essence was all that occurred before the guards in the surroundings saw a fantastical sight of instantaneous and bountiful growth of seeds they never expected to sprout in the cold, unfertile lands. I moved past the first field with quick speed as I flew around the snowy peak after this, following the lines of acres of farmland as I used budding farmer to repeatedly cause the growth and ripening of various fruits and vegetables. A hectic sight was taking place on the snowy peak where the princess had commanded for many workers and farmers to be assembled, along with a variety of storage and transport tools to be taken towards the lands they had sown seeds. The people had complete trust in their princess, but they couldn't help but wonder the logic of preparing to harvest goods that didn't even have a chance of sprouting in the barren lands. The progression of workers filled huge lines as they went forward to a particular spot on the snowy peak first. They found guards and other people that were there to see the flash of light some time back where they got the chance to watch the fantastical show of instant plant grow. Many had to rub their eyes as they looked at the vibrant field full of greenery and glistening fruits and vegetables. It is a blessing from above. We have not been forsaken. Many people were shocked to their core when they came across what used to be barren fields that were now glistening with vibrant growth. The actual farmers rushed to the fields in shock as they checked the produce, their hands trembling as they slowly brushed against the leaves and fruits of the plants. Such a thing is impossible. Yes, it was a realm of impossibility. Those knowledgeable understood how something like this could not just happen, and after the initial shock, they soon found themselves turning around to look at the person that sent the command for them to move out. Knew that this would be happening. The workers up front and the nobles that followed in the back were looking fearfully at Adelaide's cold figure as she nonchalantly began giving commands. Unlike the produce in the spiritual land, the normal plants in the outside world could reach optimum growth with a single cast of budding farmer. The fields in front of them were fully grown trees with fruits and vibrant produce that made the inhabitants of the north rub their eyes as they began to collect everything. Adelaide stood in the front lines as she conducted the movements of many people, spreading them out in this field, and then once things seemed to be moving, she moved the groups of people to the other fields where a similar miraculous growth had taken place. The next few hours of the day were spent spamming budding farmer as I moved across many fields in the snowy peak. The peak was as large as a city, and it made it seem small in my eyes as I could move around so rapidly with my speed and teleport. While I was undertaking this role as a farmer for today, many thoughts were passing through my head as the max thought acceleration worked at high speed to think of all the different possibilities that could play out in the coming days. After spending a significant amount of time thinking and going through all the skills and tools I had at my disposal, I found myself becoming calmer even after knowing the monstrous enemies that I faced after finishing the many acres of fields in the snowy peak. I paced myself and called it a night as I wanted to finally sit down and get to combine my skills. I used the communication medallion to check with Adelaide, and it seemed like she would continue to be busy until late into the night while overseeing the proper storage and movements of all the produce that was magically brought to full growth. I grabbed a few white radishes and frozen apples for myself as I transferred into the miniaturized spiritual land and appeared deep underground. The beautiful small and snowy grass waved majestically all around me as I looked at the huge expanse of space that I was transferred into not too long ago to undergo a trial. I pulled up my panel as I enjoyed these feelings of safety. Activating many skills that I couldn't keep active before because of my environment, I activated Corrupted Sword Saint's Incarnation, Absolute Zero, and many other skills that would cause a tremendous amount of damage to the surroundings just from being used. This was another way the frozen plateau spiritual land would be of benefit to me. I can spam my skills without worry and continue to rapidly increase my proficiency, and most likely even faster than before at that. I watched my body become elevated as the incarnation fully took shape. Bear Emperor's fur was also activated as the incarnation became bestial, the long sword in its hands releasing a deadly blow as boosts from all skills were fully applied. It would be a rigorous period of training up skills for the time to come as I prepared for the oncoming powerful enemies. The legendary skills were also used, with Demon King's Haki being able to be kept active at all times. When activated, I could see the grass around me trembling. But I didn't feel anything since I was the one casting it. I would have to wait and use it against new enemies to see just how powerful it was. Corrupted Sigil of Hegemony was also cast every now and then as the blue runic circle that erupted out had layers of red after the usage of the power jewel. Primal Connor was another ecstatic addition to my skills as I tried it for the first time, even though I didn't need to use it as unique skills had no proficiency in front of them. I summoned the blue manticores I had seen the Demon King used and gave them some simple commands. They flashed through with extreme speed with their wide wings and sharp stingers for tails, looking ferociously in the surroundings. I summoned the troll next and watched the previous spirits disappear as a brown monstrous figure came to life. The trolls neared 8 meters, being summoned with powerful clubs in hand as they stood menacingly awaiting orders. Lastly was Dullahan, where the 2 summoned creatures were terrifying skeletal horses with an obsidian headless metal armor sitting atop it, releasing green smoke. The smoke wrapped around the entire body of the Dullahan as if it was the only thing holding the armored headless knight above tightly to the skeletal horse. I was marveling at the sight of these spectacular skills that I could now use. I was actually experiencing the amazing feeling where the stronger I grew, my speed of rising up did not seem to slow down, but actually sped up. It was a crazy thing to think about. The only negative aspect out of all this was the fact that I would have very little sleep from now on. It wasn't crucial for someone of my caliber, but the refreshing feeling of a decent night's sleep could not be beaten. I stopped my grumbling and began combining the skills that had long since reached 100 proficiency while activating offensive skills I would normally not have a chance to spam outside of battles. Today's combined skills were Water Barrier Plus. Pain Resistance received A+, Water King's Skin Rune of Defense plus Dragon Scales received S+, Draconic Armor. Lion's Heart plus Speedster received S+, Windborne. Aura of Belligerence plus Protection of the Wounded received S+, Aura of the Demented. Obfuscation plus Flash received S+, Hidden Endeavor. Noah Osmont. Occupation Hunter Vitality 425. Focus None Strength 429. Skills A. Flight 100. Instant Transfer 100. Recorder 100. Language Comprehension 100. Lion's Roar 23. Pierce 100. Executor's Speed 100. Sense Heat Source 100. Silent Communication 75. Regal Archer's Eyes 100. Cook 38. A+. Arctic Zone 100. Relegator's Spear 23. Immutable Regeneration 100. Paladin's Blessing 11. Pursuing Infernal Lightning 1. Water King's Skin 1s. Enfeeble 100. Phoenix Arrow 1. Shield Slam 8. Budding Farmer 38. Ricocheting Shield 1. Bear's Fighting Style 1. Archer's Gamble 1. Smoldering Sword Strike 56. Earthen Spears 1. Thought Acceleration 100. Crisis Avoidance 100. Illusory Cover 33s+. Devastation 100. Draconic Armor 1. Windborne 1. Aura of the Demented 1. Hidden Endeavor 1. Epic Corrupted Sword Saints Incarnation 54. Iceberg 41. Absolute 0-39. Bone Spears 29. Bear Emperor's Fur 31. Life Steal 19. Teleport 28. Arctic Breath 16. Summon Holy Blight 23. Legendary Sigil of Hegemony 14. Demon King's Hockey 1. Memory Plunder 3. Unique Spiritual Land Management. Primal Conjurer Equipment 3x B Ring of Storage. A Ring of Storage. S Storage Pouch. S Veiled Suit. Epic Kingslayer. Epic Rat King's Mask. Epic Prismatic Guardian. Epic Unshattered Charity. Epic Tiger Eyes Roots. Chapter 126. A Demon in Disguise. News of a victorious battle had slowly disseminated from the lands in the north. Surprise sounds came from the knowledgeable people standing at the top ranks of mythical kingdoms as they looked for the connection between the battle and the recent movements of demons. They had taken a huge loss with the defeat of the Demon King that was advancing in the north, and it seemed worse enough that he didn't even come out alive. The surprising contenders of the battle that caused this change were placed on the spotlight as many tried to find who they were. An imperial phoenix was surrounded by resplendent red clouds on a high-tier spiritual land floating far in the skies as flames flared in and out of their nostrils. She listened to this news interestingly as she continued to observe the movements of demons that seemed to be acting much more prudently these past days. Just what exactly did you do to ruffle their feathers this much, human? This imperial phoenix was the only mythical beast among the three kingdoms who somewhat knew of the identity and sequence of events that occurred in the north, becoming even more curious of the human who became the first of his species to own a spiritual land. The fact that he was able to defeat a demon king and not even allow them to escape put them on a huge pedestal that even the mythical kingdoms had to respect. She stopped herself from sending a piece of consciousness out towards the north once more and just sent down messages for communications to be established with the lone kingdom in the north. The imperial phoenix was not the only one doing this, as other powerful mythical beasts also saw the disruption of balance as another powerhouse appeared on the stage. They also sent their people to the north for clarity of the situation and to establish communications. A little girl was following a procession of many carriages of merchants that were making a trip towards the north. For the first time in a while, messengers had arrived to all parts of the continent carrying a singular message: that there was a tremendous opportunity for profit in the north. A sequence of positive events had continued to occur after the victory against demons, where the agricultural industry of the Frozen Kingdom had exploded, when its citizens were facing the prospects of famine and refugees continued to fill up the streets. The queen-elect of the Frozen Kingdom caused a miracle, to say the least. The air of despair and mourning that was plaguing the north was quickly replaced by hope as people found the abundant verdant fields of green that seemingly erupted overnight. These merchants were rushing to this kingdom to have a piece of this pie, as anything to do with agriculture that was this big meant a tremendous amount of profits. They were taking with them multiple products from the surrounding mythical kingdoms for exchange as they trekked this perilous journey to the north. There were still demons moving around, yet many processions of merchants could be seen moving mercenaries, and adventurers were abundant as they worked to protect their employers from any enemies. In one of these merchant processions, there was a little girl sitting atop a carriage with her legs swinging back and forth. She had a sweet little smile as she hummed while bobbing her head side to side, looking curiously at the landscape that passed around them. She had a dark ponytail with a frilly dress and a long heart-shaped staff that she waved around in the air. They were gradually passing the lands filled with greenery from the borders of the mythical Phoenix Kingdom and stepping into a land filled with snow, when news of the victory and sudden agricultural boom were spread. The Phoenix Kingdom was the first one to send its people and merchants to the north. A command apparently coming from the top. The Beastman merchants following this particular procession all thought this girl was the daughter of one of them. She had a small furry tail coming out from behind as she cutely observed everything around her. Amidst her playful swings of the heart-shaped staff and hums, a dangerous light could be seen passing through her eyes. What these merchants thought to be the daughter of someone just playing around was actually something much more dangerous. The girl happily taking a ride in the merchants that were heading for the Frozen Kingdom was a terrible figure that could massacre all of the people around her without batting an eye. On the concept of caution, the demons were moving around carefully to find out exactly what had happened in the north. Their first piece to play was this little girl. She was the singular individual that had such perfect skills for reconnaissance and spying that even the strongest assassins would be ashamed in front of her. Her battle power was not the highest, but she was the one to give the most trouble and often caused the downfall of many kingdoms and empires across the worlds that the demons conquered. Her power laid in the two unique skills that she held, making her one of the more terrifying demon kings to hold something like this. But the universe was always fair, and not everything would be given to one being. Even though she held two unique skills, none of them were geared towards fighting. This was the Demon King Aureas of the 59th rank, holding the unique skills of spatial travel and shapeshifter. Her skills made her uniquely capable of moving around rapidly over large distances while also being able to become someone completely different through the usage of shapeshifter. Her entire aura and being would be changed to the form she wanted without any mistakes or giveaways. If she wanted to be a little girl, she would completely be a little girl. If she wanted to be a gallant knight in shining armor, nobody would be able to tell the wiser. This demon king was actually one of the direct keys that caused the downfall of the Draconic Kingdom. She had disguised herself as a powerful adventurer that gained many military exploits when the war against demons began, winning over the good favor and love of a princess knight that was fighting in the front lines. to a demon king that had lived for hundreds of years. How easy was it to play with the heart of a girl that was hundreds of years younger? It was a very thorough process that took some time, but she was able to bring the Princess Knight to her side and eventually use abyss magic from the hands of Belial, the master of illusions, to hatch a plot that took down the most powerful mythical beast of the Draconic Kingdom. Now, this same girl was going towards the north, with the Frozen Kingdom as her goal. A twisted smile could occasionally be seen as she hummed and bobbed her head side to side. She knew the news of the unbelievable boom in agriculture that should in no way be possible, and the only thought in her mind was which character to play in order to gain the trust of the highest echelons and learn about all of their secrets. Who was the being that had actually taken down Gremory, and did they have any hand in the huge moves the Frozen Kingdom was making right now? Her lips curved into the cutest smile as she thought of the mayhem she would cause in this kingdom. Chapter 127 Days of Peace. The past few days have been a scarce period of calmness that I rarely came across since the moment I awakened. I hadn't been getting an ounce of sleep as I trained my skills and moved around using budding farmer to cause explosive growths of the agricultural sector that would now be the biggest thing for the Frozen Kingdom. I was surprised yet again by the fact that Adelaide had already begun sending words through merchant channels across the continent to begin for the sale and trading of the many products that continued to abundantly flood the kingdom. They were all taken care of with the highest scrutiny as everything was calculated and stored, either to be sold in the kingdom or for the oncoming caravans of merchants that could smell money in the air. The citizens found themselves gaining a semblance of hope after the misery as the streets of Frozen Kingdom became lively once again. I remained in the spiritual land most of the time as I continued to increase the proficiency of my skills, while at the same time thinking about doing something that would be somewhat cruel. I had the mindset to just start picking some rank A and S beasts in the spiritual land and using my authority as the owner of the Frozen Plateau to create a dungeon that would allow for me to farm skills for combinations later. But after reflecting and looking at all the benefits the beasts would bring in the long run, it outweighed the small boost in power I would have after collecting and combining a few rank A and S skills. A majority of the epic beasts were weakened after I absorbed their origins during the Trial of Supremacy, and beasts at their level were one of the keys to upgrading the dungeon, so I wasn't planning on continuing to weaken them by stealing their origins. If I began weakening the strength of the lower-level beasts too, it would lead the overall same result, and I would shoot myself in the foot as I need more beasts to rise through the ranks in order to upgrade the tier of the spiritual land. The benefits that would come from upgrading the spiritual land heavily outweighed gaining a few rank A or S skills when I've already begun getting legendary ones. So the past few days were essentially a grinding session that never ended, constantly spamming my skills and learning more information about the spiritual land. The proficiency of my epic and legendary skills also continued to rise steadily. It was so tiring that I was actually looking forward to a very interesting enemy that should be approaching the kingdom very soon. From the memories of Gremory on how the rulers of the demon world moved and thought, this event where one of them died would be taken very seriously, and someone they all had high trust in would be tasked with the important job of learning everything about the situation by coming here first. I had a sense of slight excitement as I thought about the ways I could use these significant memories of the 56th ranked Demon King to plan so many things. It was hundreds of years of habits, likes, dislikes, and many secrets shared between high-ranked demons. If I used them well enough, even with the terror of the power that the demons displayed, I stood a chance of gaining huge benefits. Aside from the training of skills, I was able to witness the first harvest of produce in the spiritual land as the sacred rye was fully ready yesterday. The rye became an even brighter shade of blue and gold as they waved around proudly in the snowy fields. The spiritual land had a gorgeous transferring function that harvested all the ripened plants and placed the produce into neat rows in the underground layer that was freezing cold. As soon as they were harvested, I used spiritual land management to plant new ones on all of the fields as I checked out the sacred rye myself. I hadn't worked with something like this before and had to reach out to Adelaide on how rye was prepared to become flour or fermented to become something else. I tried to enjoy the rye just as it was without any other prepared taste pervading my mouth as the world around me seemed to become just a tad bit brighter. It seemed like they could even be enjoyed as they were without necessarily having to be The process was long, so I left all of it to the people that the princess delegated as I transported a significant amount of the sacred rye towards heavily protected storage rooms that she specified. She had plans of using this grain that could only be planted in the frozen plateau spiritual land to make specialty products of bread and fermented drinks that would be a huge sensation and bring in a significant amount of money and cores into the kingdom. Everything seemed to be on track for extreme growth, but I knew of the huge threats lurking in the dark that could bring everything down in an instant. I recalled the trap I had thoroughly concocted after spending a significant amount of time analyzing the memories from Gremory about one particular Demon King. This was a particularly eccentric one, ranked 59th, Demon King Aureas. She was a peculiar Demon King that enjoyed taking the identity of many different personas through the usage of her unique skill. Her usefulness was so high that the unprepared powerful beasts of the Draconic Kingdom fell with her help. If the demons were to make any moves, she would be the first one. I smiled as I thought about this possibility. And I was more than 90% sure about it playing out this way based on all the memories I looked over. It would be even more alarming if something other than that was to occur. I was actually in a war of information with some extremely scary and powerful individuals. They had no information about me or my abilities, while I had the memories of someone in their ranks that carried huge significance. I knew about their unique skills and, even more importantly, their personalities. Aureas enjoyed playing many different personas, but she had the one important trait, and that is she always took the same form of these personas. Whether it was a gallant knight, a sickly old lady, or an innocent girl, she always changed into the same faces. It would usually not be something that would be considered a weakness, as anyone that ended up being around her was already dancing on her palm and would be dead soon enough, but it became a weakness if an enemy knew about it. Besides her skill that allowed her to shape-shift, there was another particularly strong and peculiar one that made her extremely fearful, but it just so turned out that I had something that could completely take away the advantage of her powerful, unique skill. When the time came, I had a daring smile as I continued to train my skills and prepare. If you do end up coming, which shape will you be taking, O Demon King Aureas? Chapter 128, Father and Daughter. The Ilu.S. Trias, king of the Frozen Kingdom, was looking at an outstretched field of green in front of him. Many things seemed to be happening that he did not understand these past few days, with them bordering on the corner of miracles. He was filled with regrets of not moving fast enough to quell the fears of his people after the battle finished, having used most of his time occupying himself with his son and mulling over the decision of just what to do with him. These days, he found himself questioning if he still even had the qualifications to rule. As these thoughts passed through his mind, the guards that were around him shifted as they felt movements, and they say the figure of the Ice Princess making her way over. They quickly moved aside and put a distance between them and the two royalty, spreading across the field to watch at all vantage points. They were currently of King's Crown, which also had a few acres of fields set aside that were now glowing a vibrant green. A father and a daughter stood amidst the peacefully waving produce in front of them as the daughter spoke first. "How are you feeling?" It was a fairly simple question that many people hear every day, but always carried a different connotation depending on who was asking it. The question from Adelaide seemed like a very simple one, where it could be referring to the health or emotions that the aged king was feeling, but at the same time it seemed to be asking about even more important things. "I feel tired, my daughter." The king said this with as a sigh as he looked away at the miraculous sight of produce that rose overnight these past few days and looked at his daughter. He felt tired. Tired from the constant struggle of trying to stand out exceptionally in a world where they were a minor species that held less power. Tired because they were in a time of war and he was always advocating for peace. He felt a piece of himself breaking every time a soldier died that day. He felt tired when he came back home and saw the result of mourning and loss that he expected, but he could do nothing about it. Yet he still had to hold strong, because if it wasn't him who had the power to take the lead when the stronger enemies came once again. When he got to this point, he looked at his little girl, who seemed to be growing up too fast. The shock her actions had caused did not just stump nobles and the common people these past few days, but they had shocked him even more. How had his daughter been able to do it? "I know you're tired, father. You've been working tirelessly for tens of years to bring all of us where we are now, and it was almost all undone in the span of a few days." Adelaide walked across the field and stroked the white radishes that were growing vibrantly and yet to be harvested. "I know you're tired, father, so I came to ask you to rest." Rourke looked lovingly at his daughter as a laugh escaped from his lips. Haha, are you that eager? You know that plans and calculations aren't the only things needed to get us back on track. Power is also one of them. If a single legendary or mythical being came, no plans would work in the face of that power. A period of silence passed as the two family members thought before Adelaide released some shocking words. How do you think we were able to pass the trial of the legendary Demon King just last week? Shock ran through Rourke as he heard this, his body trembling as he looked at his daughter incredulously. You're connected to them. Who are they? Multiple questions came out as the daughter gave a calming smile to her father, a smile that wanted to do its best to reassure the increasing tension. They're people that are willing to help, but they do enjoy their privacy, so I can't really say much about them. Haha, the world has not forsaken my kingdom just yet. Good. The king seemed riled up as a semblance of his legendary power shot out, startling the nearby guards who couldn't hear a single thing about what the father and daughter were talking about in the fields. They had a hand in the miraculous events with these fields too. But which mythical kingdom are they from? Have they finally decided to come down their high pedestals and offer a hand? The king was vigorously talking as he walked back and forth, his head fully trying to wrap his men around the new information before he sternly came to look to his daughter. You trust them? Rourke looked questioningly at his daughter as he turned serious at this question. He didn't want to be duped into causing a colossal mess just because some individuals lent their power. I trust one of them. And he has control over all the others, so they're in nothing to worry about. To reassure you even more about how I was able to get in contact with them first, I'll let you in on something that even Mother chose to keep to herself. What? The king was dumbfounded at the mention of his deceased wife, Annalise, and probingly looked for his daughter to continue. The reason my mother was of such help to you in the past, the reason this kingdom was able to be so smoothly established in its beginnings, was because of a unique skill my mother held. Secrets that were only known between two people were now being shared. When she left us, she passed that unique skill down to me, warning me of an impending calamity that could be solved through the use of this skill, Golden Rule. Adelaide turned from the white radishes she was stroking as she looked strongly at her father. Even when she was growing up, this secret had stayed with her now. It was being released because there was a need for it. Its usefulness had shown itself, and now it was needed to convince this very careful man. I have found the solution to that impending calamity through this skill. It has never before lied to Mom, and it has never lied to me. That is why I am so confident when I ask that you two rest and leave everything else to me, Father. I want you to sit back and enjoy your time as you watch the spectacular show about to play out in the future. Rourke felt the shock from all of these bombshells increasing as he looked at the woman in front of him. She wasn't his little girl anymore. He thought of his dear wife and recalled everything he had done well because of her words. If he had known his daughter had the same gift as her mother, would he have bothered even going to ask for advice from his ministers? He fondly looked at his daughter as he stroked her head. Silly child. Why didn't you say so earlier? Kingship is it? I've been holding on to it for too long anyway. Come, let's get the preparations underway. Chapter 129. A little girl arrives in the north. A large number of carriages and people were standing in long lines behind the large fortress walls of the Frozen Kingdom. Merchants had brightly shining faces as their eyes settled on the kingdom that had boundless opportunities. Nobody in their right mind could explain the agricultural boom that had occurred, but as long as there were products, there would be people to buy and sell them. Among the merchants, there was still the usual flow of refugees coming into the kingdom. Every single person was being checked thoroughly before entering, the guards being on the highest alert. A little girl was swinging her legs happily as she rode on top of a carriage and looked upon the fortress walls with shining eyes. Demon King Aureus had finally arrived in the northern kingdom. The carriage she was on passed through the checkpoints with no problems, and soon the sights of a bustling town with people rapidly moving about made itself clear. Aureus was observing everything around her with rapt attention as she listened to the conversations she heard. The king is retiring so soon, huh? I'm excited to see the coronation of the queen in the days to come. Bah! You're still going on about that? That's the wrong thing to focus on, man. It's all about the new foods being distributed and sold right now. I wonder how the princess was able to do what she did. Haha! It's a blessing from the world. Simple as that. Come on. Let's go buy some more and stock up for the future. The people in the kingdom seemed to be relatively happy, not the types that knew they were in the middle of the war with invaders breathing down their necks. Orias absorbed these sights as a small red pen and black notebook appeared in her hands as she began writing notes. Morale is high in the kingdom, change in leadership is imminent. The carriage she was on came to a stop at a certain shop as the merchants began to batter and unload their products, looking longingly at the shining produce. That could be seen in many of the shops around them. There were signs of construction going on across the town, and in most other places you looked at as more inns and houses were being built to accommodate the continued refugees that fled into the kingdom. Orias continued to scribble in her book. Unlike how most other kingdoms in this world are currently, the kingdom in the north seems to be actively expanding. She was recording the littlest of things as she tried to be very thorough, even if they didn't seem important. When she went over them later, she might find something that could point her in the right direction. She moved around carefully as she continued to observe the kingdom, most of her information coming from the conversations that continued to occur around her. Sir Adventurer, I heard you were in the battle and watched firsthand how the hero defeated the Demon King. Can you describe what you saw? A small conversation quickly made her ears perk up as she neared the location where a bunch of mercenaries and adventurers were salutes. Teared. Haha, you want to hear about how the Demon King fell? Very well, listen closely. The hero flew valiantly in the skies with wings of light blinding the Demon King. Hell flames were summoned all around as the hero raised his hands to the sky and called down a golden sword of light that vanquished the Demon King where he stood. Haha. The notes Orias was writing in her book stopped as she looked at this drunkard that definitely did not see how that crucial battle went. But she continued to collect any information about the newcomers that appeared that day. They were the individuals she needed information about the most. She continued to walk around the first town of the kingdom as she looked towards the 4 floating peaks in the skies. Her eyes turned into slits as they shined red and focused, her figure disappearing from the crowds of people as she silently teleported to one of the peaks in the skies. Her unique skill, spatial travel, had been used. Orias' daring figure appeared on Snowy Peak, the floating landmass where most of the talk about the soon-to-be enthroned queen was taking place. If there was anywhere with abundant information, it would be here. The figure of the little girl inconspicuously moved across the crowds of merchants and adventurers on Snowy Peak as she continued to collect information in the next few hours. A significant amount of time has been spent observing so far, nothing out of the ordinary, except a distinct feeling where I received looks longer than I should have, but that could just be from my cautiousness. She finished her last note as she prepared to find a hideout to stay in before she carefully continued tomorrow, with another body and face at that too. It was at this moment a dark-haired man that seemed like the most overly dressed noble opened the door to his carriage that was passing by the road. Ah, such a sweet little child. Where are your parents? The man seemed very caring as he looked at the figure of Orias, his eyes showing a disgusting expression as they up and down. The Demon King's attention was quickly picked up as she smiled cutely. Haha, I was lost, and am looking for them right now. Would you help me find them, mister? The man holding the carriage door open looked around the environment, as if checking to see if anyone was paying attention before replying. Yes, I'll help you find them. Come into the carriage and you can tell me where you lost them. He seemed to hurry her along as if he didn't want to be seen. Orias looked at this bumbling man as her eyes shined dangerously. This was one of the reasons she preferred this small form so much. It seemed so defenseless and easy to bully, that disgusting people like this would always appear to throw themselves at her. She enjoyed killing these disgusting creatures in the most vilest of ways. The moment they thought they were a predator about to prey on an innocent girl, they found themselves headless with their lives turning into complete darkness. Orias smiled innocently as she stepped into the carriage which closed its doors. It looked like she had found her hideout for the day, as the location this carriage was heading to would only find itself bathed in blood today. She looked at the disgusting expression on the man's face that seemed to say he couldn't wait as his slimy hands reached out towards her and landed on her shoulders. A dangerous light passed in her eyes as she prepared to innocently ask what the man was doing when a drastic change occurred. A flash of silver light erupted from the man as his expression wholly changed to become one of utter focus as killing intent erupted. After the silver light passed, the carriage became empty. In the short span of time that was 1 minute, the area around the carriage had been completely cleared as preparations put into place, and luck met all at once, causing this astounding scene to occur. The 59th ranked Demon King, as well as the dark-haired man that baited her, had disappeared. Chapter 130 to 30 seconds. A plan can be made perfectly, but then many things can go wrong after. One of the only ways to make a plan successful is to be the one holding the most information and account for all the possibilities. The possibility that a lone Demon King that was proficient in spying and quick movements would come to collect information about the place where a momentous event occurred was high. The question after was, how would you know who this Demon King was, and even possibly get your hands on them? The memories from a close-knit individual from their ranks gave all the answers, and brought about the outcome occurring now. Multiple posters had been passed out over the last few days showing the very clear face of a little girl, a gallant man, and a poor old lady that were in Gremry's memories over the many soldiers and guards around the kingdom. The moment they were to see any of these figures, they had to quietly report right away. Shadow guards were placed on the front lines with their covert abilities and had been working overtime these past few days. Yet, this was just one of the cards that I played. Another one that was even more foolproof was the unique skill of my favorite princess, Golden Rule. The skill allowed the user to see different colors of light depending on what intentions and possible effects a person could have on the user. The effects that a Demon King could bring were huge, so Adelaide would be able to confirm whether I was facing a Demon King the moment the eyes spread out all over the kingdom found any resemblances of the pictures drawn out. Among the many forms she took, Demon King Orias's favorite form was that of a defenseless girl that any disgusting pervert would try to get their hands on. Orias's favorite hobby was flaying these perverts slowly as soon as they showed themselves to her. This was the form I placed a high chance of seeing, so all I had to do was to first find her as soon as she appeared in this form. Confirm I made no mistakes with Adelaide's eyes and put on a play of something she had been used to seeing. The moment the communication came through that a girl matching the description had been found, I felt the adrenaline rush through me as the plan seemed to be perfectly falling into place. I silently moved Adelaide out of the spiritual land and watched as her face drained of color when her eyes landed on the figure of a little girl moving around Snowy Peak. After getting this confirmation, everything was ready to move on to the next phase. The battle had to take place at a completely different location, as too many lives would be lost if I attacked her right in the throngs of moving people. I changed into the most extravagant clothes I prepared and rushed out with a carriage towards the location she was moving in. Shadow guards were on standby as they got ready to clear the area out at the slightest signs of any issues. Putting my emotions in check, I opened the carriage doors and acted the part of the vilest human in existence, and I was able to get my hands on her before I cast teleport on the both of us. The next part of the plan lies here. This Demon King was one of the few that held two powerful unique skills, one for quickly moving anywhere she wanted, and another for changing into her many forms. She didn't have high battle power, but could simply use her unique skill that was leagues above teleport to simply leave as soon she felt a threat to her life. This was the next thing that I had to counter. Amazingly enough for me, after using the Demon's Power Jewel on my legendary skill and creating Corrupted Sigil of Hegemony, a beautiful new feature that perfectly countered the powerful spatial skill of the Demon King was their Corrupted Sigil of Hegemony. A highly protective sigil establishes itself as far as 30 meters around you, empowering you and your allies while hindering your foes for 30 seconds. Another 30 seconds are required before the runic forces can be activated again. Absorbs half of all damage dealt while active, plus 300 casting and attack speed, plus 300 damage to enemies in sigil, plus 300 speed, minus 75 enemy elemental resistances, minus 75 enemy speed. Restrict movement is applied. Restrict movement. This newly added function, after being enhanced by the Power Jewel, allowed the skill to heavily restrict any movements while enemies were in the range of the skill, and this also applied to spatial movement. This meant that the Demon King's unique skill that allowed her to teleport anywhere she wished would be of no use for 30 seconds. It was in these 30 seconds that I had to kill her. If these seconds passed and she was still alive, she would run away in the next instant and they would finally have information about me. In these next 30 seconds, I couldn't even allow her to think. RAA. The Emperor Penguin and other beasts were already waiting on standby in the underground area of the spiritual land. They threw out their most powerful attacks where the figures of me and the Demon King just appeared as a blue runic sigil inlaid with red was already spreading out to cover all of us. Corrupted sigil of hegemony was initiated. 30 seconds. Aureus quickly adapted as she found herself in this perilous situation, her body quickly transforming to become blood red as her figure exploded in size. Hellish flames began to swirl around her as they formed into multiple layers of shields. My attacks were already flying out as every single powerful skill I had was initiated. Primal Conjurer was cast beforehand as two terrifying trolls carrying heavy weapons struck down on the body of Aureus, smashing through the fiery shields and mangling her flesh while grounding her bones as her body received the full debuffs of the corrupted sigil of hegemony and a recently cast enfeeble, all while my summons were heavily boosted by it. The two trolls summoned from the Primal Conjurer skills were extremely physically powerful legendary beasts, their strikes causing panic to appear in the blood-red eyes of Aureus. The Holy Blight had the hordes of defiled corpses already throwing themselves at the blood-red demon as they exploded spectacularly, a poisonous breath rolling out from it right after. Not a single inch of breathing room was given to the Demon King as attacks continued to rain left and right. 20 seconds. My body was moving backwards from the center of this explosive mess as the incarnation of a corrupted sword saint wrapped all around me. Bear Emperor's fur wrapping it up right after and Demon King's hockey activating and making the entire area around me tremble, pushing Aureus' figure into the ground as freezing storms of ice elements surrounded me from absolute zero. A red light was blooming from the Demon King's body as she tried to retaliate the swarming of two legendary trolls, epic beasts, and the Holy Blight's attacks. All that met her was an arctic breath that was thrown out from me next, freezing everything in a storm of destruction that was dissipating right after. WAH. Her figure let out a wail as the hazy outline of a terrifying banshee formed around her, elevating her injured body while trying to heal the heavy wounds she was dealt. 10 seconds. My now large figure spun rapidly in midair with a humongous blade in hand, gaining speed as I shot myself down like a missile with the sword stretched out right. Bone Spear was cast as multiple deathly pulsating spears appeared en masse and went down with me towards the struggling body of the Demon King. The hazy outline of a red banshee was broken through and scattered as the blade pierced down towards the frozen earth. Boom. The blade broke through the freezing ice and the figure of the Demon King that was held in place, meeting the forehead of the demon and nailing it to the ground. I breathed heavily from the adrenaline as I watched the destructive cold elements split apart muscle and bone. A red light shining thereafter as the 59th ranked Demon King met her end. 0 seconds.